Hey Alexamen, I am Nash and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm actually going to do a video on spirits, in particular contacting spirits, because I am doing a collaboration with Boardwalk t-shirts, which have supplied me with this amazing t-shirt because Sundays are for seances. Also, it's given me a great idea for some content revolving around spirits, and the other t-shirt that they sent me, I love it. I'm in love. And this t-shirt is going to be the basis for a series on runes, how to use them for divination purposes, contacting deities and such. And also, if you want to get your hands on these t-shirts, which I'm probably going to end up splurging and spending way too much money on more myself, you can go to the link in the description and you can get 10% off using the code that I have provided. That's some good stuff, and I'm really excited because I have terrible self-esteem and I'm super excited that somebody wanted to work with me. So I'm going to do a video on spirits because it is a very passionate topic of mine. I always kind of been drawn to spirits as they are, and it's something that's always fascinated me. And fun fact, I actually wrote an entire end-of-term essay on spirits for my philosophy class and somehow managed to pass with it. So, let's get started. So, there are many reasons why you would want to contact spirits, whether they're the spirits of your ancestors or the spirits of nature that exist all around us. Although communicating with spirits sometimes gets a bad rap, particularly in the media or horror movies, particularly revolving around Ouija boards, which are the basis of many horror movies, and demons and Ghost Adventures also plays on this trope. But not all spirits are malicious. In fact, I would argue that a majority of spirits actually aren't malicious at all. If you approach them with respect and reverence and an open mind, they can be quite helpful. So, there are a few well-known ways of communicating with spirits. Most notably, and probably most infamously, is the Ouija board, which was created in the 1890s by a man named Elijah Bond. Now, this board was originally created as a board game, and today it is still sold by Hasbro, I believe, and you can buy it at most stores. I used to have a glow-in-the-dark one. I have since lost it. A majority of people are most familiar with this due to its reputation. However, it was originally started as a board game, and when spiritualism became more popular in the late 1800s, it became more connected with a means of contacting spirits. So my personal take on these boards is that they are no more likely to summon a demon or a malicious entity than any other method of communication. It's kind of like in a similar way to how Loki can be perceived as a malicious entity or deity if that's the only opening you give him, because that's the opening he will take. That is the only opening that you are providing for communication and contact. So that is what they are going to latch on to. So, for instance, if you go into a Ouija session and you're expecting negativity and you're hyper-focusing on that in your mind, that is the only path, the only road that you're giving these spirits for entry. So that is how they are going to try to communicate with you, because that is what you are focused on and expecting. So really, it's kind of like your expectations will impact what you get out of your communications with any of these methods, really. So, although Ouija boards are the most known ways of contacting spirits, there are actually numerous other ways. For instance, there are tarot cards, there are runes, there is scrying mediums. Scrying mediums meaning like a medium for scrying, like a crystal ball, for say, which we will get to in a second. And also there are mediums who can communicate with spirits because they are naturally attuned to the spirit world and have a connection that allows them to interact more than most people would be able to. So when using things like runes or tarot cards, or even spirit boards to an extent, the responses aren't always direct. And a lot of the communication is left up to intuition and feelings. So if you ask a question and you get, if you're using a spirit board, for instance, and you get a response, but it doesn't quite make sense, it's kind of up to you to figure out what exactly the spirit is trying to communicate. And this is exemplified in runes, for instance. So if you use runes, a spirit, in my opinion, kind of influences your intuition in your mind when you choose a rune. So it kind of influences the one that you choose, the one that you feel is the right one to pick. And the meaning of that rune can be many different things, and the way that you interpret it based on your question can be up to you and what's going on, how it fits into the question that you're trying to ask. It's very kind of esoteric because it's not all like a one-size-fits-all, depending on who you're trying to communicate to, what you're asking, and things like that. So this is just kind of a broad overview with no real specifics because everybody approaches things differently, and there are various different situations. So, the tools that you can use, for instance, there is scrying. Now you can use flames for scrying, you can use a mirror. Some people use just a plain mirror, some people paint it black. And then there's also crystals that you can use. You can also use a bowl of water or such. I personally have a crystal ball that I've had for a few years. So when scrying, most people will look into the object that they are using for scrying, and then the images that they perceive through it, you interpret what the meaning of it is. There is a fly that is distracting me. Why? So that is one method. I'm just going to briefly go over these because each of these really deserve their own video, but I wanted to do a broad one to give you an idea of the different tools that you can use. This is the first set that I ever got. Hello, light. So when using tarot for a reading, I just kind of have these all together. I tend to use the major arcana. And then if clarification is needed, pull something from the minor deck. But basically you would shuffle the cards in your hand, and then you would kind of just pick one that you feel is calling to you specifically. So depending on the card that you get, it's really hard to get things to focus on here. Depending on the card that you get, you can interpret the meaning. Again, based on the question that you've asked or how you're trying to communicate. And if you need further clarification, you can always pull something from the minor, which is upside down, and try to get more clarification based off of that. Going on to other methods, the runes. Now, when using runes for spirit communication, or even if you do like a daily rune draw, like I used to do this when I should still be doing it, but I used to do it when I was trying to teach myself the individual meanings of a rune. So I would draw a rune every day, and I would make it a priority to focus on that rune specifically, learn its meaning, its name, and all of that stuff. And doing this daily is kind of a good way to cement in your mind the different meanings of these runes. So it's kind of similar to a daily rune draw, at least the way that I do it. Some other people might do castings and stuff like that, but I tend to ask a question similar to how you would use tarot cards, and whichever one calls to you would be the rune that you would go to, such as Monnes. I pronounce things really weird, yes I know. And then I have my pendulum. Now when using a pendulum, some people don't use a pendulum board with it, and some people would start by asking a question such, is the sky blue? And since the answer to that is yes, if it goes back and forth this way, it would be a yes. If you ask, is the sky green, and it goes this way, that's a no. So that works for using yes or no questions. There's also circular setup boards that are kind of like a Ouija board that have letters around them. You can also sometimes, I've seen people use pendulums for finding things, which is something that I've never attempted. So I was watching a show at one point, and they brought in a medium who said that you can use a pendulum, asking the spirit of this person's family member to kind of divine them and lead them to something that they were looking for in this person's house who had passed. And I can't remember what the outcome was, but I'd never seen it used like that before. But it kind of makes sense that, like, depending on how it moves, like, you could be getting closer or colder to something. I've never personally tried it, but it is something to keep in mind. So, another thing that a lot of people are concerned about when it comes to spirit communication is the inherent dangers that can come with it. Especially because this is one thing that's talked about a lot in horror movies and even in like ghost hunting shows. Looking at you, Zach Baggins, is if you touch a Ouija board, you're gonna get possessed by the Zozo demon. No. Now, yes, there is an inherent danger when communicating with spirits because you physically can't see them, because they are so mercurial. There is a chance that you could be speaking to somebody who could lie about their name or lie about their intentions. In my experience, spirits tend to be more curious about the living, especially if they're like spirits of nature and such. Previously alive human spirits tend to enjoy communication with people because they tend to be forgotten about. They still can interact when people open doors to them, but ultimately they're just kind of there, and they, in my experience, they kind of like being acknowledged, like, oh hey, you are here, I recognize that. So it's kind of like a not forgetting about them thing. And this is especially true if you're trying to contact ancestors. It's like a way to keep them with you even though they're not physically with you. You can still communicate with them. With that said, there are spirits that can be malicious, and there are spirits that can do harm. However, in my experience, this tends to be more energetic or non-physical in nature as opposed to physical harm, unless you're dealing with a particularly powerful entity. And even then, with respect, if you choose not to open a gateway of like fear for instance, if you go into a communication session with fear, you're afraid that something's going to happen. That's basically a beacon, in my experience, to entities that thrive and feed off of that. One analogy that I like to make is, if you've ever played the Dragon Age games, there is the Nightmare Demon that feeds upon negativity and the fears of people. So like Solas's fear is dying alone. That fear gives this entity power. So when you enter into a session with fear, you are fueling the negative energy. With that said, there are ways that you can help protect yourself. If you cleanse your space before undergoing a communication session, this can help drive away the negative energy. And if you go into a session without fear. Now, this can be hard, and it can require some practice because humans tend to have an inherent fear of things that they don't understand. So when you're first starting out, it's natural to feel afraid of something that's communicating with you, but you can't see it. So it's a normal reaction to have a fear response. However, you need to work on overcoming that, which takes practice. So my best advice would be to start small. And to remember that you can always break communication if you don't feel safe, or if you feel uncomfortable, or if you feel like something isn't on the up and up. You can respectfully break communication by thanking the spirit for its time and closing the connection. You can even do another cleansing afterwards, or if you really want to double down, you can do a banishing ritual to help further remove the negativity from your space. However, it is also worth mentioning that some physical signs can stem from stress. So if you feel like you've had a negative experience with a spirit, the stress of that can inflict physical ailments upon you. The stress and anxiety in particular can cause a whole slew of physical reactions in the body, which aren't necessarily caused by the spirit. It's in the mind, which is fascinating because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You feel like, oh no, this spirit has harmed me, even though it hasn't. But in your mind, you fear so much that something is going to go wrong that it influences your body to be like, oh, I feel ill, or I feel shaky, and things like that. But usually, most spirits won't harm you to that extent. And also, product placement. Hey, Dunkin' Donuts, do you want to sponsor a witch this Halloween season? You sponsor TikTokers, you might as well sponsor me too. Okay, back on track. So in my experience, a majority of spirits are simply curious, and if you approach them with respect and an open mind, they can be quite helpful. If you want to communicate with spirits, there are many tools that you can use. So it's worth spending time thinking about the method that resonates with you most. Like, I personally prefer using runes over tarot cards because I feel more drawn to the runes in particular. And so it will be up to you to decide which method works best for you and which one you vibe with the most, if that makes sense. And then again, if you want to experiment with different methods to see which one works best for you, that's okay as well. I mean, sometimes it takes time to find your niche. So, I mean, and especially when working with runes, it takes time to learn the meanings and everything like that. So I would recommend, if you're using runes, to try doing a daily rune draw and focusing on the runes that you choose, meditate on their meanings, their names, and things like that to help solidify in your brain what they mean. And same with tarot cards. You can do a daily tarot drawing and meditate on that card, the meaning behind it, and such. So, with all of that being said, practice does make perfect. It will take time for you to hone the ability to contact spirits and be able to interpret responses. It's not something that can happen overnight unless you are particularly gifted in spirit communication, such as a medium. I am unfortunately not. So it takes time, it takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a lot of work. But if you're willing to put in that work, it can be a great way to attune yourself to the non-physical plane. So, with all of that being said, I hope you all have enjoyed this video, and I hope you have learned something. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. And if you would like to get a shirt like this for yourself, and also they have a lot of other awesome shirts, specifically a lot of awesome occult-themed shirts. I'm obsessed with t-shirts. I think t-shirts are a great way to, like, show off unique things about you. I don't know why, I've always, like, I have this shirt that has two sarcastic dolphins on it that says I'm dead inside. And, you know, it's just, like, t-shirts are just so cool. Like, when I worked at Hot Topic, I spent, like, half of my paycheck every payday on more t-shirts. Like, half of my paycheck went back to my store. So, if you're obsessed with t-shirts like I am, totally use that link in my description to get 10% off of any t-shirts that you want, because I know you want them if you're a t-shirt hoarder like me. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Bye!